Remember Sega's Dreamcast? It's one of my favourite consoles, but it's an old console and this is an old pad, which we're going to make like new. Hi, welcome back to the shed. This here is the controller for one of my favourite consoles of all time, Sega's Dreamcast. Now you can see I've got quite a few of these lined up for a refurb, but I've picked out the one that I figured was the worst state because there's a few things I can do with this. But really all I'm going to do is take it apart, clean it up and see if I can get it looking a bit more like new. I don't think I'll be able to get it perfect, but I'll be able to get it much nicer than this. So really it's just a quick clean up, you following me along with the process and seeing how that goes. So hopefully it'll make for a decent video. If not, I'll probably post it anyway. So let's see how we go. Cheers. Quick note before we start. If you're doing a job like this and you're taking the time to refurb something, always check to see if it works first. Yeah, we'll get to that later. What we've got here is a Sega Dreamcast control pad, and it's in pretty good shape considering how it looks. There's actually not much that can be broken on these. So even though they take a lot of abuse over the years and there's scuffs and there's marks and there's dirt all over it, it is retrievable. In here, where we've got the little screen, that's actually a retractable memory card. These are what's called the VMU, so it's got like a little screen that should display on there. Obviously nothing coming up there, so we'll replace the battery in that too. This doesn't need too much of a clean up, but the controller itself really does. There's dirt in all the nooks and crannies on there, in all these gaps here, down the side, on the back from where it's being put down. There's scuffs and marks here and there. All around here there's marks, and the screws as well. I don't know if you can see there, but they're all rusted away. So I'm going to take it apart, do the best I can. I'm starting with the worst one and I'll hopefully get the hang of it as I go, but I really want to see if I can get this to a better state than it is currently. Okay, so for a clean-up operation like this is a typical example of the sort of equipment I would have to hand. First of all, as I've mentioned before, the baby wipes are perfect for cleaning up plastics, getting all the main dirt off without causing any damage to the material. Scotch-Brite, that's pretty good for getting the rust off the screw caps and also some very stubborn scuffs out of the plastic. That can help sometimes. It is quite abrasive though, so I'll avoid using that on the plastic where I can. Speaking of abrasives, Magic Eraser. This is where you get those really stubborn black marks that will not come out with the wipes. This is very slightly abrasive. If you haven't used one of these before, it's like a little fine sponge and you get it wet, you rub it over and it sort of reduces scuffs and marks and things. I've got one of these. It's like a nail file type thing and it's got like different stages that you use for filing nails and it's brilliant for plastics. You go through different stages to actually file to the shape you want, smooth it out and then gradually work your way up and it'll polish up to a really high finish. I've done that on bits of like DS lights and things and it's a really handy piece of kit and they're dead cheap as well, so that's worth adding to your toolkit. Sticky stuff remover, so if you've had like price labels or stickers or someone's had the good idea of putting a label on with their name or something, when you remove those and it leaves that residue, this sort of stuff's great for getting that off. Very fine microfiber cloth, regular kind of microfiber cloth. These are always good for cleaning up or drying off. Kitchen roll, cotton buds or cocktail sticks, an old toothbrush, one of these fine brushes like a little paintbrush, and also a pencil eraser. Sometimes these can come in handy for things like cleaning up electrical contacts and things. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to have to hand. We're going to start with the pad itself. To take this one apart, if you look on the back, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws, which in this case are very rusted. So I'll use my crosshead screwdriver, nothing fancy on these. Not like with the Nintendo consoles where you've got your Y-wing screws. They're all pretty rusty and in pretty bad way. Wiggle it round, drag it along a little bit and it'll just take that rust off the surface. Anything around the edges, I can just use that and kind of rub it around the edge like a cloth. The screws cleaned up. One of the things about that is that although they are now better, they're more usable, the rust has gone. They're a little bit uneven on top because the metal is exposed. Originally they were black. So while I'm waiting for everything else to be done, what I'm thinking of doing is I've got my pencil eraser that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to use that just to hold these in place, and I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on the tips of each screw. And there we go, 6 little black screws. No one would ever notice it if they picked it up and played on your pad, but you'll have that satisfaction. Now you could call it overkill. I like to call it attention to detail. It's the little details like this that make a job all the more satisfying. I don't recall ever having taken one of these apart before, so this is new for me. The top just lifted out of the bottom. That was easy enough. Oh, this is the joy of working with old consoles. Screws that are nice and big, lots of mechanical parts. Fairly straightforward, this. So we've got the bottom half of the shell that is definitely going to need a clean up, so that's one part. In here we've got our triggers and we've got the main PCB. There are 2 screws on this side and none on the other, it looks like, so let's just get those out. We've also got screws, 2 black screws where the socket. Now while I'm doing that, actually, these 2 sockets here, you'll notice that there's 2 like for the memory cards, but also for the vibration pack. So you could have a vibration pack. So that was before all the controllers had like built-in rumble. So you got like your memory card and your rumble pack, and they plopped in there. You might be able to have 2 memory cards in one controller, can't remember now. So that now lifts out, and we've got our front pad that separates out here, which is our sort of socket for the memory cards to go in. In terms of this, I will be cleaning up the triggers. We'll be taking a look on the circuit board. Definitely clean up the control pad. They're like the kind of black type contacts. I tend to leave well alone with those. If they're the exposed copper, then they're easy enough to clean up. If it's the black, I tend to leave those alone. I will clean up these little rubber pads. Definitely clean up the stick, so that'll come off. That's a whole little self-contained assembly there. The cable's pretty gross itself, so we'll be cleaning that up. Let's take a look at the front section. Buttons. So of course all the individual buttons are a little bit gross, they'll need cleaning up. We've got A, B, X, Y, start button, D-pad, and then we've got the main front of the controller. Now that's 2-part really, because you got the light and the dark grey. Now they look like they would separate. Looks like this just slides out or something, so let's do that carefully because I do not know what I'm doing. It should slide back, but there's possibly, there we go. So that, there's a little clip there that just popped up, and then it's easy enough to remove. I'm going to leave the little Dreamcast sticker attached there. You'll notice that's a blue swirl on mine. You might be used to an orange swirl if you're in the NTSC territories. So in the USA, in Japan, there was an orange swirl on there, but for some reason in Europe, in the UK, we got a blue swirl. I actually really like the blue swirl. On my actual Dreamcast, I swapped out the orange power LED for a blue one so it matches, so that looks pretty good. So one at a time, we're going to clean up these bits. Right, I was about to start cleaning up yesterday and my battery died on my camera and I had no spares, so they've all been on charge yesterday. So here we go with having another go at this cleanup. Probably most satisfying to start with the front shell, so we'll move everything else out of the way. So first a quick wipe down. There's a big scuff here, which I don't know if it's just dirt or what, so we'll start with that. Looks like it is very lightly scratched, so that'll give us the opportunity to try the magic eraser in a bit, so we'll just get this cleaned up first. We're doing the buttonholes. It's quite good to just sort of feed the wipe through, pull it through from the back until it kind of lodges in place, and then you can get a bit of a circular motion. You can even grab it from both sides and sort of whiz it round and get pressure on both sides, and then that clears it out quite well. These really awkward little gaps, toothbrush is brilliant for it. You just get a little bit of the moisture inside from the wipe and then you just keep going at it in all directions. If it's a little awkward in the actual gaps there, just work a little bit more from the wipe in and then back in with the brush, or a cocktail stick or a spudger or something like that can get the little bits out as well. So that's totally clear for those two. You can even lay it over the top and brush. Most of the top done. Then there's these bits where the two parts of the shell go together, and that's pretty gross usually, because this is where people will actually hold, so that's where the sweaty hands go. So yeah, that'll need a clean. Right, so that's most of the dirt off. Next what I'll do is just give it a quick wipe down, and I'll look at it now. There's a few marks that wouldn't come off with the wipe. There's a couple of little dings and scuffs here, a little black mark there, and then that side's not too bad, and then there's this little mark here that wouldn't come out. This is where the magic eraser comes in. First thing I'd do is just give it another go with the wipe, just in case it's just needing a bit more patience. But if that won't work, this is where your magic eraser comes in. Now these need to be wet. Now I've no tap in the shed. Aha, Joe Bleep's hip flask. Sadly, it just contains water, but it is handy for when I need to wet my sponge on my soldering iron, or in the case of doing these, quite useful. So all that does, see where I've got like the little, don't know if you can even see it, but there's a little black spot there. I'll just rub till that's gone, which it will go. And I had a little one over here as well. And the main culprit, which was this part where there was the little ding and the little blackened bits there. Now you don't need to go overboard with this, just gently rub until it's gone. If you really scrub at it, you might end up leaving some marks behind, which is not what you're aiming to do. It does take patience. Check for any other bits. There's a little one there. That's everything. That's all done, cleaned, dried off, looks really good. Really pleased with how that's turned out. This was actually the worst of all the controllers that I had in terms of the condition, so I've just grabbed one of the others off the shelf so we can have a look and a reminder of what it might have been like. Look at the two side by side, you can see how much better that's turned out. So that's been well worthwhile. Now the back has got this sticker on it. In this case it's a bit scuffed and scratched on the back. That corner of the sticker is already sort of peeling off a bit, and it's put on slightly wonky in the first place, so that sort of thing drives me mad. So I'm going to remove that sticker before I do any more of the cleaning up. We can at least see what colour it's supposed to be underneath. Now if that's discoloured, it might need a little bit of the retro bright treatment, but we'll see. Sticker's removed, it's left a little bit of residue. So what I'm going to do is use my sticky stuff remover and just put a little bit on some kitchen roll and rub it over that area for a bit. Yeah, that has ended up slightly discoloured. Where you've got recesses like this, it's worth getting them quite wet and then going in all directions with the toothbrush. Got some scuffs there, so the magic eraser should hopefully take care of them. Getting that gap where the cable goes. Right, so now I've got these where the screws go, that's where this comes in handy. And also the cocktail stick, just to get into the really angular bit. Also, if you put that around there, you kind of wipe up and down the insides of these bits, which is quite handy. Right, now before I bother with the UV treatment, I've just had a thought that maybe I might be able to even out that discoloration just with the magic eraser and just clean over this whole area. That's much better. Yep, that's all alright. So now we've got the top and bottom all done, cleaned up, looking pretty good. Slightly, when I'm holding it in the light, I can see the odd scuff and scratch here, so I'm going to just buff those out slightly. I can separate these two again. And same on the other side. Just dry that off. That's come up much smoother. Don't overdo it with the magic eraser, it really doesn't take much. It is abrasive, but it doesn't leave any rough marks or scratches behind like glass paper or Scotch-Brite would. Pretty happy with that. Now with this being from the inside, you wouldn't have thought it would cause much problem, but it looks like it's been used a lot without a memory card in there, so yeah, that's a bit gross. Easiest way of doing that is to get a smallish toothbrush, put the wipe over the top of the head, and just waggle it about in there a bit. Get to most of the nooks and crannies quite easily that way. Yeah, that's looking good already. Do the same in the top. Come up fine, and then just the brush to finish off. Not too bad. Okay, done. Right, now this bit with the logo sticker that's on there, there is a very slight gap between the sticker and the other bit, which seems to have collected some dirt, so I'm expecting that will be the tricky bit. See if the toothbrush gets in there. Okay, that looks good. Right, onto the buttons. We'll start by looking at the analog stick. That just pops off the top, and a bit like the GameCube ones. I could even replace it with a GameCube one, but we're going for authenticity. So, oh, that came up so quick. It just came up fine straight away. All looks alright. Give it a quick brush. That is perfect. The rest of it, because it's been inside the controller, isn't so bad. And then that will just slot on back on top there. D-pad. Toothbrush over the top again like I did with the other bit. It's got just the right kind of consistency to be able to get into the gaps, but you've got the surface of the wipe to clean everything as well. And a little bit just on the edges with the magic eraser. My hand is cramping up with this. See if I can get through the other buttons. Looking pretty clean now. Start button should be quite quick. That side's all a bit scratched and scuffed along there, so we'll just take that edge. Let's get it sorted. Is our start button all done? You can see plenty of dirt all the way around, and in the top, in the actual lettering as well. Look at the X there. There's all dirt inside there and around the edges. These are cleaning up easier than I expected. Slightly harder to keep hold of, but they're coming up alright. I'll do the edges a little bit with the magic eraser. Looking pretty good. Control board is largely clean, just get any dust and dirt out of those. They will sort of peel back and lift off, build up of dust and dirt on top. Just kind of wipe them with your thumb dry, and it just sort of pulls everything off there. Just inspect those to make sure there's no tears, no damage. That looks okay. All the way along the cable there's lots and lots of dirt. That's come up super clean, really quick. That's where it's come up clean. That's one of the dirty bits. There's a big difference. If you do a longer bit, it'll all buckle, but a short section at a time like that. And just keep making your way along with cable. Keep turning it around, looking top and bottom. That worked much better than I expected. The whole cable has come up really nice and clean. First of all, I can get that back in place there. That just hooked in there like that and then clicks in like that. We can flip over. There's one little peg sticking out the side there and there's a little gap here, so that's nice and easy. So we've got the A, B, X, Y. There's two little slots there, so you're definitely going to get that triangle the right way around. That'll sit flat on there for the start button. This one here, there's a little peg sticking out for that circle to go around. That just sits right at the edge of the board, pushes in and stays in place as well, which makes it easier for when you're flipping it upside down to go back in. There's little grooves here, so the PCB should hopefully just slot in both sides. All those in the right position. They're easily knocked out, so I'll hold it from the bottom there. Try not to knock any. Not to let that slide out, because you could do with 3 hands for this. Feed that through, and I think that's everything catered for. So that will loop there and slot in. At that point it can only go one way around because there's a slight bevel to the angle there, so that'll slot in there. There we go. Okay, so everything's in place. Slot over there. Right, custom painted screws. Carefully pop those back in. Now that was just what I had to hand at the time, but that rubber pencil eraser, whatever you want to call it, was really handy for the screws to go in while I painted them. And although it felt a bit silly at the time, it does look really good with the little, I mean you probably can't see there, but with the little black painted screws instead of the rusty ones that were in there before. That's all okay. The thing about the cable with these is that they loop around on themselves and then clip into this little bit here. But that's our controller pretty much done. So this one was worse, much worse than that before, as it was with all the dirt. The cleaned up one, that really has come up nice. The VMU, I don't think I'm going to need to take this apart. It'd be a waste of time doing that. There is a little bit of mess on the back from a sticker. Right, so that's all come up fine now. I think I'll replace the battery in this while I'm at it. You can get these quite cheap now, but back when the Dreamcast first came out they were really, really expensive. Okay, so these are what you want, CR2032. And they're child safety packaging, which means I really struggle with getting them out. So that goes in there with the lettering facing upwards. Now the thing about these with the batteries in is that it works fine. Right, you hear that beep? That's the reason why I'm putting the batteries in. As a memory card it works fine, it saves you games, and if the batteries run out you don't lose anything. Powers it on when you plug into the console, but that beep that you heard there when I added the battery, you'll hear that every time, so I'm going to set the date on there. Okay, yes. And there we go, Sega Visual Memory Unit, and we've got all our different modes we can go through. So there's like little games built in, or a clock, and it was a cool little idea. So that just slots in here. And you've got a little screen, so when you load up your game it brings up like the logo to do with whatever game is in there. And that is my completed controller. And it looks, well, I said at the beginning I wanted it to look like new. I did go in quite optimistic, but that I am really, really happy with. Yeah. I wanted it to look like new, and it is pretty much like new. Front, back, cable, everything's like I've just bought it. It's like it's 1999 all over again. But I'm going to take it in and do some testing and have a bit of an evening playing some wonderful Dreamcast games. As a project, that was really easy. It was really satisfying because it was horrible to start with. Just like all these other ones up here, I know I can get something really good out of it, and you end up, it comes out really, really clean. If you're thorough with it, it's quite easy to take apart. There's not many screws involved. It's not difficult to separate anything. I'd say it's a great project. So if you've got one and you've got a controller and it's a little bit grubby, yeah, if you want to give it a go, give it a go. So I'm going to leave you and go and play it on my Dreamcast with my brand new-ish controller, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much for watching. Right, so somewhat unexpectedly, we are back. So that was last night. I took the finished pad inside, set it up on the Dreamcast, loaded up Crazy Taxi, and nothing. Nothing at all from the controller. It wasn't registering. Tried unplugging it, replugging it in. Anyway, long story short, it turns out the issue is this plug. When I looked inside, there's 5 little tiny sort of brass pins that should be right up to the edge here, and they're not. They've kind of been pushed in. I thought they might have been corroded and snapped off, seeing as the screws were all corroded, but it's not. They've still got like the rounded end on the shape. So I've got 2 options. I can open this up and rearrange everything inside and put it back together, and hopefully it'll work. If that doesn't work, I can take the cable from one of these other pads I've got here, I clean that up and at least attach that to this pad, and then try and do a repair further down the line. But I'm curious about being able to do this, because when I googled it and when I searched on YouTube, I couldn't actually find anything about either taking these apart or repairing them. So this is something seemingly new, unless I missed it. So it doesn't bode well that it's doable, but I'm going to try. I'm going to see how I go on, and if it works, then we'll have a bit of a guide. So let's see, fingers crossed. This is the plug from the controller. Everything about it is fine, apart from on the inside. There should be like 3 little visible brass bits there and 2 little visible bits there, and when I looked inside, they've been pushed right down. They should come all the way up to the end. So what we need to do is somehow get this apart. Now there's no evidence of screws, so it looks like it's something that's either glued or clipped together. There's a slight seam around here where I'm going to start now, because they're so close together. I'm planning to start with like an old razor blade, just because it's so thin, to get into the gap there, and then I've got a few different prying tools to try and separate it out. I think it might be worth warming it up a little bit as well. So this is my heat gun, my soldering iron rework station. I'll just warm over the plastic, might make it a little easier to separate. So I'll work my way along there, and it's separated that side. The reason for warming it up is just because these are like 20 years old and the plastic can be quite brittle. Doing something like this and putting it under force, it's quite likely to break it. So by warming it up, you're making the plastic a bit more flexible, and hopefully that means that I am less likely to break it, which is what we're attempting anyway. So just slide along the gap and see if we can get that to separate. That's come apart now. It's still quite hot. There we go. Right, well, this is new. I've not found anything online about being able to separate these, so I had no idea what it'd be like inside. So to separate these parts, there's a top bit, and it looks like nothing's broken on that, but there's 4 little tabs that stick out there. There's the insides here, which is the bits where I can see straight away what's dropped out of there. So that should just wiggle free from there. This is the inside, where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little tabs there, and they just push together and click in place. So we might get this fixed yet. I'm optimistic. So this is where all the little connectors are, and you can see straight away that the blue one is further in than the green. So when I'm looking in at the end there, I can see a little bit of the gold coloured metal there from the blue one, but the green is much further out. So let's get in there with the tweezers, see if I can push these back in. Oh, they're going in really easily. Right, that's all the cables pushed in, and now they come flush up to the edge on the top. They're a little further in on the bottom. So this is really awkward because the wires are so short, but I think they can go in a little bit further. I think what I'll do is perhaps remove the ground so I can get to the others a bit more easily, and then resolder the ground afterwards. I'll a bit of solder onto my soldering iron first. That could just help it flow when you add a little bit more. There we go, got all that flowing. Just move that wire out of the way. Let that cool. And what that will allow me to do is get in here a little bit more closely. I pulled out the green from the left and the blue from the right, which gives me a bit more access to this point. Push all of those in as far as I can. Careful with the hot glue gun right next to my fingers. Then I will try and carefully get the green and blue back in. Sorry, I keep wandering off camera. Got the green one in, the blue one in there. That's the thing, normally I'll be quite confident when I'm showing you things on the camera. When it's something like this and it's brand new to me, slightly less focused on showing you guys, a little bit more focused on actually getting it right. So they're lined up. Not sure if it was the best idea pulling these out. They come all the way up to the top there. The other three are visible inside. Hopefully they will be far enough in to work. I mean, they're fairly secure in there. I don't think it's going to need a lot of hot glue, but while it's open, I'll put a tiny bit on. That's in place. So let's get it back together. There's a flattened side and a curved side, and you can see curves over the top. It's flat on the bottom there, so we'll start with the flat one. Just pushes in there. The actual cabling is a sort of square profile. There we go. That just drops in there. So that's one end in. These wires under some strain actually, and then that there. So if this doesn't work, I'll try and work out some way of being able to extract the wires a little bit out from the cable. But for now, I can go on there, push it, and that just clip back together, no problem at all. Right, I'm going to go and test it, and I'll be back. You can probably tell by the smile on my face that that worked. Once it went back together, the pins were a little bit further in, so I checked against one of my other controllers and the pins come all the way up to the end. So I think if I was to do this again, I think they should be fine because they're glued in place, but if it happens on another controller, what I would do is I would be careful to try and extend the wires as much as I could to get that metal bit all the way up to the end. But as they are, there's enough of a contact there. What I did was I loaded it up, played Marvel vs Capcom 2, because that requires all the buttons to be used, and there were no problems with it at all. Bit of an unexpected video, but we've ended up with a refurb and repair, which is good, because when I looked it up, I couldn't find any guides for repairing these controllers at all. Okay, so it's for you to go and try out if you want. If you've got one of these that doesn't work and you want to try that fix, try it out, let me know how you get on, let me know in the comments, and good luck. But I'm going to actually go and play on it now. Cheers.